Then I was fertilized and became wise. I truly grew and thrived. From a word to a word, I was led to a word. From a deed to a deed, I was led to a deed. The children of Europe, raised in her fire and fury, have a history unequaled. Nowhere has witnessed such depths of tragedy or heights of glory. Mimmersbrunner is dedicated to celebrating both Europe and her children, to stir the sacred waters that animate, and to bring the ancient ways back to the forefront of the European mind. Through our work, we wish to rekindle those ancient embers of the European fire, and to once again hold our ancestors and their deeds in the reverence they deserve. To know your ancestors is to know yourself. Hello guys, and welcome to Mimmersbrunner Live, our first live stream. I do apologise for the little bit of technical problems we were experiencing there in the long intro. I'd accidentally left the players up whilst I was monitoring the streams, and it was causing some kind of feedback. So I do apologise for that. But something I want to get out of the way first of all is that this is our first time doing this kind of thing, so there may be some errors. Some mess-ups along the way, a few little technical problems, and I do apologise in advance for any of those. My camera seems not set properly. But yeah, hopefully it'll go without too many problems. But it's good to see we've got quite a few people in here. If I just quickly check. Probably about 100 total, I think. Maybe just over. Which is really great to have you all in on this Winter Solstice evening here in the UK. It's great to see some people in the chat. We've got Spartan Warrior Queen. Poseidon's there. Good to see you, mate. Steve's there. Everybody's there in Facebook chat, and my chat box is working. Sorry. Although this is like I say, it is our first time. We're just trying to get ourselves together with the technology. I'm not the greatest tech buff in the world. Thankfully, I'm not alone in my endeavour with Mimmersbrunner. We have Riss and Hallinder with us. They will be in the chats on YouTube and DLive as moderators. Unfortunately, we're not doing great at moderating the Facebook chat, although I can see it. So I should be able to catch anything. But yep, so thanks for joining us here at the longest night of the year. And for those who don't know who I am the narrator and writer at Mimmersbrunner. And like I mentioned earlier, we have Hallinder, who is the musical maestro, the musical magician, who composes for many of our videos. And all of our videos, are have his music. So, except for our first one, before we introduced ourselves to him and asked him kindly. And since then, we've had a great working relationship with him. He's a really good guy. And same for Riss, who, without Riss, this live stream definitely wouldn't have happened, because I wouldn't be able to work my way around this, given a few years, I think. So, thankfully to him, and he's obviously the guy that does all the great editing over our main project, our videos, although we do write articles too. Well, I do, and they're over at mimmersbrunner.com. Oh yeah, and Hallinder just reminded me that yes, the Summer Solstice video did have some tracks by Wolkensmen, especially Haosuna, which was kind of appropriate, and it's kind of a well-known song within our circles, so we thought we'd put it up there. And a happy solstice to everybody. I can see lots of people commenting in the different chats. It's great to have you here, like I say. Now, as for questions, before we start, we're going to have to get a few things out of the way. Obviously, tonight we're going to be talking about the Winter Solstice. We're going to be talking about some of the ideas behind it, some of the natural observations, as if you will, of what maybe our ancestors were seeing at this time. But before we do that, we have to get a few things out of the way. First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you. A big thank you to everybody that has supported us, both financially and with shares and comments. The comments have been a great source of inspiration and keeping us going when, is it really worth it? What are we doing? Is anybody watching? And the comments, honestly, especially on YouTube and Facebook, they're so beautifully put. And it's a real encouragement, I can assure you. Me, Halander, and Riss all definitely check them out. And I'm sorry I don't apologize. Getting my words mixed up. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous as well. This is my first time on camera. Hello. And it's all new to me. So before, I was having a bit of a panic attack while we were getting audio problems because I didn't want them to affect the main show. But no, the comments are great. And I don't reply to them all because I'd only end up saying the same thing over and over again. Thanks, and we're very humbled by some of the comments because they're so great, and also people that support us a little bit financially. With merchandise sales, that's the t-shirts and etc., and any donations, as well as the Patreons, and especially thanks to the Patreons because their constant support has allowed us to do things and get subscriptions like Restream, which is allowing us to go out on all these platforms. But all the money that we've spent, we have actually spent a lot of cash on just trying to get this set up. I've got a Stream Deck here, and we've got a few programs, which has all been very interesting to learn. Like I say, I'm not the most technically gifted, but it's been great. And it's, like I say, we just wouldn't have been able to have done it without your help. No chance. We do not have the money to outlay on that. We've already invested a hell of a lot of money into Mimmersbrunner. In fact, we've spent pretty much everything that we have been donated and through merchandise sales on setting this up, and even gone a little bit over into our initial investment or our initial output, which we've kept in, which was kindly put in by Riss, by the way, who helped finance Mimmersbrunner, especially the shirts and things like that. And I'd just like to say, because I have seen the messages, Asher Logos is in the chat, which I'm very happy for him to join us. So thank you, mate. He's another great channel, so I'd definitely check him out, as well as Poseidon, who was in earlier. These are some great channels doing great work within our circles. Bringing back, especially Asher, who brings back our history and tries to have a different perspective and a new look from the looks that we're getting from the mainstream sometimes. And it will be something I will touch on towards the end of the show. That is how we're perceived, how our faith and our folk are being perceived in the modern era. And how we can maybe change some of those things. But like I say, I want to say a big thank you to everybody, really everybody that has supported us, because this live stream just would not be possible. And I do apologise for my maybe slightly unprofessional manner at the moment, I should say. But like I say, the nerves are kicking in, and I'm just trying to remember what I've got to say and what I've got to do tonight before I get into the main topic, where I'll probably be a little bit more relaxed. And I'd just like to say thank you to all the comments coming in. I'm seeing again, just like I see under the videos, some beautiful comments. And thank you all for watching, by the way, everybody that's saying thank you for our videos. Because if nobody's watching them, there's no point. And thanks for sharing them, because we're still a small channel. It's hard to get the message out. When we started out, we were very apprehensive about how we would be perceived, how our work would go down. And like I say, we've been overwhelmed, really overwhelmed with just the absolute I mean, it's almost 99% positive comments with the odd troll comment, which for the internet, as anybody knows who's been on it for a little bit, knows that that can be that's quite an impressive score for us. On that front, we've managed to keep most of the trolls away at least. Now, what else have I got to do? Sorry, I'm just going to have to check some notes here. What else have I got to do before we start? Oh, okay, that's it. Yeah. Also, we will take questions. We're not going to do it like a lot of channels where you have to donate, although, of course, you can donate and ask questions, although we haven't really set that up, so maybe on Ko-Fi. But we're going to try and get questions from anybody that wants to ask them. That's what Rhys and Hallinder's job's mostly going to be about. They'll be monitoring the chat boxes where they can. Like I say, we're having a few problems with Facebook chat, although I can see it. And if you direct your messages, tag Hallinder or Rhys at Mimmersborough, I believe, if Rhys could speak, so everybody could see him, Rhys and Hal could speak. It'd be great to see them. And if you want to ask any questions, please tag them. All I ask about the questions is that we try to keep them on topic. I see a lot of streams that go all over the place, and I'd like to try and keep this in one kind of area centrally. And I see that Racial Consciousness is here with us. Great to have you here, mate. He's over on Twitter. He does a lot of interesting posts, provoke thought, and promoting our folk in a positive light. So it's great to have him here. We're getting some big names here, so I'm really pleased you could join us, and everybody else, of course. Everybody's input is greatly appreciated. Like I say, one of the great things about doing Mimmersborough, for me personally, when I started out, it was just a simple personal quest. Just to share my insights, and that's something that I'll be touching on as well. I'm no expert, I'm no learned scholar, academic, or anything like that. I'm just a man who wants to understand his ancestors, wants to know what they fought. And in the dark times that we sometimes experience in these modern ages, it is something that has given me great strength. It's allowed me to create. It's what first made me decide to write, even though I had a lot of nerves about that. I was very unsure about where I was going, and I was unsure of my knowledge, what I was sharing. Like I say, it was meant to be just me sharing my experiences and what I learned. And there's a lot of people out there that have been doing this for a long time. A lot older than me. They've been looking at these things for 30 years or more. And I was worried about how my little takes on things would come across. But like I say, the response has been great. And then when Rhys joined the team, the videos came. And it became a whole different ball game then. I mean, Rhys is an exceptionally talented man, and I'm thankful that he reached out to me. And I'm also thankful to say that both Rhys and Hallinder, we've all become really great friends over the process. And what I'm trying to talk about here is how it's all about input, connecting, getting back to each other. And this is one of the reasons why we started the live stream, so I can get some live feedback. We can talk about things. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about trying to explore our ancestors, try to get to know them. Like Winter Solstice tonight, which is the longest night of the year here in the UK. I'm pretty sure I've checked 100 times to make sure that this is correct. But I read articles this morning in the newspapers. Everybody was celebrating the sunrise this morning. Well, Stonehenge is set, its main alignment is to the sunset. But which sunset? The sunset after the shortest day, the longest night, which would be tonight? Or was it the night before? Because that was closest to the solstice, because the solstice occurred at 4:19 a.m. here in the UK. Now, I won't go into too much detail there because I end up confusing myself. But what I'm saying is there was me having a moment of doubt. What day is it? And what day should I be celebrating? And then the question comes, what day were my ancestors looking at? And this is essentially the the whole aspect, the whole reason behind Mimmersbrunner in the original, at its beginnings, was me trying to understand my ancestors. And the best way to understand them is sometimes to admit that we don't know. That we don't know something, because when we admit we don't know something, we're open to exploring it. We're open to new ideas, and we're open to taking those ideas in and trying to figure it out for ourselves, feel on an intuitive level. Look at all the research available and try to make up our own minds. Not read books about books about books. And that's something we're going to get into tonight. Is about some of my findings on Winter Solstice. Not so much the exact timing, although I do promise to endeavour to find that answer out, or at least get my take on that answer, of what exactly they were celebrating. But tonight we're going to be talking mostly about some things that I brought up, and now I'm going to try a fancy button, so bear with me, and we'll see if it works. Sorry about this. There you go. I wrote an article on this subject the other day. And I had a look at some of the ideas that had been working, that I'd been thinking about recently. Because last year we made a video, which I was meant to, if I read my notes properly, have played before I did this, but I'll play it in a minute. So I was trying to have a look at the natural cycles, because one thing I do want to say here is that as great as all the mythology is, as great as all of the wisdom in the books, the archaeology, the wisdom that we can get from the archaeology, and the wisdom that we can take from our ancestors' writings and the further back we go, one of the great things, well, the actual foundation for all of that knowledge is the world around us. Everybody has access to the original library, the first library of man, nature. Every single book that has ever been written, every thought that has ever occurred, all stemmed at its original point from a man observing nature, observing himself and his relationship with that nature, trying to pick up the cycles, first of all the simple, the spring, the summer, the autumn, the winter. But over time, he started to reflect even more deeply on how these things affect you. And that's something we're going to be talking about tonight, where we're going to be looking back at nature, stepping back from the mythology, stepping back from even the archaeology, stepping back from the exact dates, and trying to find out what this time of year means. What it meant to our ancestors, and what it means to us today. Because for all the changes in the world, the grass still grows, the trees still slumber at this time, things are constant. And it is those constants that help us maintain our sanity. I mean, we are born into a world where there are no instruction manuals. We're born into a society and we take those values. One of the problems in the modern age is that our society is, for want of a better word, gone a bit haywire. There's mass depression, mass suicides. There's all sorts of terrible things that I don't want to go into too much tonight, because I want to keep this positive, but especially at this time of year, people feel that hopelessness. They feel that they've lost touch with the world, where the greatest place to find your place in the world is nature. And it is the place where it all began, where everything began, where we began. So when we look back at that, it can give us a great underpinning for all the mythology that we can read later. And a foundational knowledge of nature is a great thing. And even to think of it in ways that we don't normally think, and see how it affects our lives in ways we don't normally expect. We've become so technologically advanced. Science has dominated us, the age of reason, or supposed reason and logic, although on its play out in the modern society is anything but. But we've become almost agnostic, well, not even agnostic, atheistic. We've started to see the world in a very material light, without any spiritual connection, because we are, for the most part, removed from it. Most people like me, even though I live in a small village, I'm surrounded by concrete and bricks and mortar and street lights and pavements. And we can sometimes lose our place within that. We've got lights all night long. I've got lights on tonight. We've got street lights out in the street. We don't get to appreciate the darkness for what the darkness is. So one way we can start to combat this is not only get out there, but start contemplating these seasons. Start contemplating how they make us feel. Outside of our societal boundaries, outside of what society has taught us. To try to reconnect, like I say, with the ancestors. And we can never know for sure what they did at this night on Winter Solstice. We can only imagine at the great ceremonies that must have taken place. I mean, I often lie in bed, trying to imagine what they were doing. And the only way we can do that, like I say, is going back to the original library, the same library that they looked at, the same books that they were reading. The paper before it had turned into a book, the trees, the birds, the songs, the migration patterns. And it's things like, and also see how they reflect in our lives, like I say. And that was kind of the premise for this article I wrote. And last year I talked about new beginnings, and that's something we're going to get into. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play last year's vid while I just get some water, because in my haste there I'd forgot to bring a drink. That tea that I'm drinking is an empty cup, as I found out when I tried to drink some. So I'm going to play the video, and I'll be back in about 2 minutes to actually get into this subject and see if there's any questions, etc. before I start. So I'll catch you. Sorry for looking down. I'm still not used to my buttons, but I'll catch you in a few minutes. Be right back.
The Winter Solstice. To our ancestors, this date held a magical attraction. Such was their reverence that they marked its coming in the land. No other time of year has so many ancient monuments built in its honour. Newgrange, Maze Hall, Glastonbury Tor, and even the most famous of them all, Stonehenge, make up just a fraction of their number. While such solar alignments can be found all over the world, nowhere are there so many or dating back so far as in Northern and Western Europe. These ancient monuments dating to the Neolithic are not only testament to the reverence our forebears held for this date, but as they still stand to this day, also testament to their craftsmanship. Thousands of tons of earth and stone were moved in their creation. With only stone and bone tools at hand, these monuments are a symbol of their devotion and admiration for nature itself. From our vantage point, we can only imagine the spectacle of ceremony that took place at such sites. At Stonehenge, we have evidence of thousands of folk arriving from places all over Northern Europe to celebrate the majesty of this night. This at a time when tribal groups were little more than extended families, all gathering to see out the darkest night together and witness the rebirth of the sun. As it is a birth, we also find evidence of the mother. From the work of Bede, we get mention of Modronit, or Mother's Night. Although Bede places this on Christmas Eve, it is not unreasonable to assume that in pre-Christian times, this would have been the day before midwinter, or even midwinter itself. Before the sun would have been seen on land, it would first peek out from the great oceans, again giving us omen of the birth. The sea here being akin to the amniotic waters. For half a year the world had slowly been devoured by darkness. For our forebears, who were sustained mostly by farming, this meant whatever they had harvested in the autumn was to a large extent all they had to see them through the coming darkness. With each passing day, not only did the darkness eat away at the light, but they ate away at their supplies. We struggle to imagine the sense of foreboding that must have come with this. Imagine looking into your children's eyes after a poor harvest, knowing what was to come, what they would have to endure, and not knowing if they would make it. This hardship may also be represented in other mythology associated with this time of year, the Wild Hunt. This procession of the dead, often led by a powerful figure of mythology like King Arthur or Woden himself, was often seen as an ominous omen to those who witnessed it. Given this event was said to occur in the dark of night in the middle of winter, only a man in distress or desperate state would be out in such inhospitable conditions. It is easy to imagine that a man staring into his child's starving eyes would be driven to such desperation, risking all for his beloved family on a dangerous hunt, where he was just as likely to be the prey as the predator. The symbology contained within this solar event, that of darkness, danger and hope, is on a larger scale represented in our modern times. Who among us would argue that a darkness has not descended upon our world? That men driven by a spiritual hunger are losing their minds, trying to fill the void left by materialistic and nihilistic modern culture. In this desperation, many have fallen victim to all manner of vices, falling deeper into the darkness of the spiritual abyss. Many of these may not see the sun's return, but there is hope. I see some men venturing out into the darkness, not lost, but with purpose. Driven by love, these men refuse to see their folks suffer, refuse to succumb to the darkness, to be corrupted by it, but to conquer it. Much like the Neolithic man looking into his child's eyes, they look into the eyes of their folk, and by their will make solemn oath, and refuse to allow their demise. Like the reddening of the sky before the sun rises, I see the signs of the birth of a new hope, a new light, a renewal of the ancient and glorious veneration of life itself. I see a new man dawning, ready and willing to start his ascent, to face his fears, his own darkness, and like the sun, drive it out.
Well, there we go, guys. Now I'm back. And that was our video last year, and it talks about our rebirth and seeing ourselves. So this year I decided to look into it a little bit more, to try and understand exactly what this time of year meant to our ancestors. And in doing so, I found some interesting connections. When I first set out on this journey, it was probably this autumn when I first started to ponder some of these questions, because I started to notice that as the nights drew in and as the harvest season, represented by the scythe, had come to an end, we start our time of reflection and remembrance. This is true in the real world, in our everyday lives and our ceremonies. The 11th hour of the 11th day on the 11th month, or the closest Sunday to that date, we all, in this country at least, we have Remembrance Day, and I think it's called Veterans Day in the US. Sorry if I've got that wrong. We remember. We start looking back at those that have given their lives for us, those that have changed our world in some way. The same time of year we get, especially in America, we get Thanksgiving, where you once again remember your ancestors, their first journey, their intrepid journey into a new land, a new way of being and a new life, and all those that came after them in the great migrations from the old world to the new. So I started to ponder that these events start to occur at the same time of year, so why would that be? Is this just random coincidence? Or is there more to it? And when I first started looking at this, I started to conceive maybe first our ancestors. After the harvest and all the hard work had been done, they would settle around their fires. The winter's coming in, especially in the if you go back to certain periods of history, it was very, very cold up here in the north. Still is in some places in Scandinavia, although sadly now we're getting less and less snow, less and less. We're still getting the cold snaps, but not like I remember. And I am only 40 years old. Well, nearly, not quite. I'm aging myself there. And I remember stories from my grandma, who tell me about stories that was snow. The snow. I'm gonna have to put the chat out the way. Sorry, because it's slightly distracting. Although I am trying to follow it. But stories of snow up to their waists, and I experienced that a couple of times when I was younger. But now my children barely experience it at all. Barely experience any snow. But if we go back, we can imagine our ancestors sitting around a fire, and after a long year's harvest and hard work, you can imagine that they would start telling stories to each other about, like I do to my children, about their ancestors, people that have come and gone in my lifetime. And I'm sure the same. And the mythologies and the old stories that we may not fully understand, but we tell them anyway, because they're part of our overall tradition. So obviously this period, even from just that standpoint, you could see why this idea of remembrance would occur at this time. In the natural cycles, like I say, we're slightly out of our natural cycles now. The work's never done. There's always more to do. And the faster we can do things, and the more technology we get to make ourselves do it faster, the more we have to do. Or the electrical devices we had to save time only mean we've got more time to do more things. We're constantly busy. We don't have that rest period, which is what I want to come to with this time of year. Because first we have the reflection, where we look back on our past failures, maybe. And I'm a keen gardener, or when I had a bigger garden, I was. And you really start to pay attention to the seasons there. And anybody that has got a garden that wants to try to understand nature better, it is a really great way to start your seeds and watch them develop and pay attention to the temperatures, the changes. It's honestly, I learned a lot just from planting plants. And I also got a lot of free food out of it. Well, I say free food. It's the way it's what food's meant to cost, your effort. But through these observations, we see that this time is a time of slumber. We look at nature. We look at all the trees as they lose their leaves, except for obviously the evergreens, which have their own symbolism, but the great oaks. And as they all lose their leaves, the world goes into a sleep. And after the harvest, John Barleycorn has died. There's the end of death. So, although in our modern age we see winter as an end, it's actually placed at the beginning of the year in many ways. Or even our ancestors would have seen it as midwinter. But even then, it's still straddling this end times of the harvest, where the scythe. I mean, the Grim Reaper doesn't carry the scythe for no reason. He's harvesting souls. At harvest time, we harvest the corn. We harvest our food, and the world goes into a sleep. Or a death, if you want to see it like that, a symbolic death. And obviously, we have the relationship of spring, where we see the birth, where these seeds come up. And that seems like a more natural beginning. And the end of autumn seems like a natural end. So it got me thinking about this period of time and what it really was. Although we have phrases like the winter of our lives, meaning the end, it didn't seem to make sense to me. It seems that this period of time is not an end or a beginning. It's a time of, as the title of the show says, reflection and conception. A time where first we reflect upon our past mistakes, as I said, and the heroics and greatness of people that came before us, because we're preparing for the darkest night and the times, the dark times, where you can't go out, the snow's boring up your doors, it's cold, it's rainy, it's wet. So we reflect upon what we did right and what we did wrong. We take encouragement from our ancestors who endured harder ships than us, because we have that way of looking back and seeing all these tasks as mightier than ours, till one day we become the memory, the ones that made it through. And that seemed, like I said earlier, that seemed kind of natural. And then you have Winter Solstice tonight, where the sun kind of encapsulates this season of winter in a 3-day period. First, we have the longest night, where the sun is furthest away from us, from our observational reality at least. And as we enter into this world, the sun goes down at sunset, and we enter this dark period. And then for 3 days, it almost stops still, just like the world around it. Through winter, everything stops still. As I said, the trees going to sleep. And in the past, human beings, ourselves, our ancestors, would have took a lull period. There wasn't much they could do in those times. So the sun goes into its own slumber. And then it once again rises, which would be represented by, so the longest night would be represented by the death of the end of autumn. The 3-day period would be representing winter of the slumber, and then we would have the birth again as the sun once again begins her ascension. Glorious Sunna. And this, so even there it is encapsulated, this period of in-between, not quite one and not quite the other. But as we come after this period of winter solstice, we all start to prepare and plan. I know from a gardening perspective, it would be after Christmas time, or Yule, I should say. Sorry about that. Slip of the tongue there. But after this Yule period was over, I would start planning. I would start looking at seeds to buy for my garden. What am I going to grow next year? What did I learn from last year? What can I apply next year? What am I going to do differently? And although that was just gardening, we can see it on a wider scale in our world, of this time when we can reflect and conceive. But before I move on to maybe the wider stories, I want to talk as well about how this is also reflected in the days of the week. We interestingly, Sunday again, named after Gloria Suna, appears at this kind of in-between place. It's the official beginning of the week, yet most people see it as the end. Monday morning signals our work day, when we're off to work to earn our bread and feed our families and try to take care of our personal affairs. But Sunday, I say, and it follows the Saturday, which is named after Kronos, the harvester, the harvest god, the devourer of time. So again, we have the harvest. Although Monday, I haven't quite understood that personally yet, how that would be a rebirth of such. But it's something that I will look into. Like I say, and like I said at the beginning, this Mimers when it started out as my personal journey, and it still very much is. It's me sharing with you things that I find or find interesting. Because, as I said at the beginning, it was kind of my rebirth. When I got lost in my mid-20s, I suppose, where I didn't really know where I was going. I didn't really know where I wanted to be. Kind of my slumber time in my life, I suppose. And it was through my faith and trying to understand my ancestors that I gained a great strength. And that was something that I thought, even if just a few people read my articles at the time, because obviously Riss was not involved then. A few people read my articles, a few people looked up and could find some insight that maybe helped embolden them to begin their lives. Because like I say, we can be crowded in a world of where we're just completely lost, and many people are, and still are. Even people that find the faith, they lose their way, and it can be very easy. But like I say, going back to this most holy of nights, Winter Solstice, where our ancestors certainly venerated as one of the most important times of the year, if not the most important, especially back in the very early times like the Neolithic and possibly the Bronze Age. So, like I say, back to my questions, I was starting to picture this image of this middle time, this time of rest and rebide, of remembrance and conception. And like I say, with the things happening, how many things, I mean, we even see it in traditions today. New Year's resolution. The remembering's done, now it is time for conception. We start conceiving ourselves better. We look to the future and see what we want to change about the past. And we start enacting that by giving ourselves a resolution. I'm going to start going to the gym. I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to spend more time with my children. I'm going to, whatever that resolution is, whatever that personal endeavor is, we start to think of ourselves anew. So again, the seasons, their movements start to affect our lives, just like they did with the remembrance ceremony of Thanksgiving, of Remembrance Day. It seems that the season's feelings, the ideas captured within the season, the natural cycles, were starting to manifest within ourselves. Even if we were unaware or whatever the case may be, they seem to occur. They seem to move us. So given the current state of our situation, and that is with the difficulties that we're facing as a people. Now, I am a folkish heathen for anybody that is unaware. I love my faith and I love my folk. And in fact, my folk are embedded in my faith. There is no separation. The health and unity of my folk and their well-being is at the top of my list in my duty to my faith, my gods and my goddesses. And that is something that I am proud of saying, and I have no shame in that. I don't make excuses for my ancestors, nor do I make excuses for wanting to preserve them within us, because we are their dream of immortality. We are them now. And that is the only way you can see yourself. You are literally the culmination of everything they did. Every trial they overcome, every hardship they endured created you. It was out of that you were born. This is not some, like I say in one of the videos that I'm going to play at the end of this stream, your time is now. You are not an accident. You are no random event. It was not luck or any other element of chance that brought you into this existence. You were conceived in the memory of your ancestors, just as this time of year. You are the living embodiment. From them you took form. And I make no apologies for that. And I make no apologies for my people. Without their efforts, their endurance and tenacity, I would not be here. I will not forsake them for some popular social idea, some fad. Nature, as I say, is the great library. It is the original. And that is where I take my inspiration. It is where I take my ideas. And all things in nature protect and love their own. And I am no different. My children are my life. They are what I am. They are my continuation. So I try to embody them with all the things that I think they're going to need. And one of those things is pride in ourselves and our ancestors. So I am an ethnic nationalist too. And I don't mind saying that. I believe that our people deserve their homelands that I have lived in for thousands of years. It's not a matter of hate or anything like that. So in these times when both our homelands and our faith is under attack, I did a interview with Henrik over at Red Eyes, talking about the rune ban. Now, if people had read my article, I got a little bit of flack from that for people saying I was taking it over, taking a little bit out of context. But what I'd like to say about that is, when I wrote the article, I said that I did not believe that a rune ban would take place. My concerns were that it was another wrong to make us stop looking back, to feel shame or some kind of fear about embracing our old ways, to turn people away before they'd even looked. And we see it now, it's still happening. Recently, we had an attack on the word Anglo-Saxon to stop being used academically. Some of you may have heard about this, where just the term Anglo-Saxon now is deemed offensive. My ancestors, their name, what we know them as, what they knew themselves as, is now offensive to others who have just arrived and just came. I find a frustration with that. And like I say, I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm not afraid to say it or speak it. And I don't think we should be afraid to say or speak these things. Our people deserve the rewards of their ancestors. They deserve the world that they created, because it was created ultimately for them, for us. And we should have no shame in that. So as we look at this period of the darkest night, the very in-between of the in-between place, where we're switching from reflection to conception, I think it is important that, as I said, these seasons seem to thread themselves into our world, whether we're conscious of it or not. So we should, maybe why our ancestors saw this period as so powerful and worthy of such veneration, is because they saw magic and power within it. So when we look back at all the things that have happened over the last year, and I'm sure there's many streams that have gone through all of these crazy happenings, like I say, for wanting to ban the word Anglo-Saxon because it's offensive, or it's, I don't fully know their reasoning. Their reasoning is madness to me, whatever it is. So when we look back over the madness that has ensued before us, we start now at this pinnacle point to start to conceive, to start to learn, not just from the year that's gone, but from our ancestors, as I did when I first started out on this journey, to become bold in our action. One of the, I would like to just mention about the Kimberley, who we will be finishing the series, I do promise you this. One of the things that first attracted me to the Kimberley, that at first gave me daunting, and it was actually the Kimberley were the inspiration behind Consequence of Cowardice. Consequence of Cowardice came out of me trying to understand their actions, especially at the end of the battle, where they commit essentially mass suicide in a way. I could never imagine myself doing that, and it jolted me, having children of my own, how that could be. I knew there was reason to it. I do not doubt my ancestors. They have their reasons and methods, and they were far more in tune with the world than I will probably ever be. So Consequences of Cowardice came out of that understanding of what drove them to their actions. And the Kimberley, one of the great things about the Kimberley was the way that they lived and died. They lived with no compromise. They were as pure as at the end as they were at their birth. They lived their own lives in accordance to their own beliefs, their own nature, and they never, no matter what the threat, no matter what the obstacle, they never backed down to it. They faced it. They faced its reality and took the course of action that they believed was best to avoid becoming the slaves of others. And that's an important lesson for us to learn as we look back and move forward. Because we need to gain that strength, that it's okay to be a European. That it's not only okay, it's great. We're built upon greatness. In a world where we're constantly ducking and diving, people too afraid to use their names to show their face, just because they have a point of view, where folkish heathenist groups, just folkish heathenism, these are completely religious groups, completely focused and dedicated to the study and understanding of their ancestors and their honouring, are attacked, and people that join these groups are harassed out of their jobs just for honouring their own. We need to take stock of where we're going, where we've been and where we're going, just like the Cimbri had to. Now, I hope that we never have to face the fate of the Cimbri, but we need to rise to our own challenges, where we can say unashamedly what we are, because there is no shame in it. And I would like to add, I, as a folkish heathen, have been to folkish heathenist groups and have met many online since starting Mimmersburg. I have never met such good people in all my life. People, I've been around fires and celebrations with children playing and dancing. Beautiful women singing beautiful songs around campfires. Men talking and women talking, children asking questions about the gods, the goddesses. There's no hate there, only love. And I, for one, will be damned if I will allow these good people to have their name dragged through mud for the sake of some modern idea of what it is to virtue signal, to be okay. Anyways, again, a bit ranty there. And I do get emotional, by the way. So sorry for that, guys. It's how I write. It's how I talk. I try to embody what I'm feeling and try to express it fully in all ways. Some people think that tears and things are a weakness, but I can assure you my tears come from a place that is not anything but weak. In fact, it comes from my strength. It's how I connect. But back to Winter Solstice night. It's something that we need to take forward. We need to be conceiving now. A new world. A world we want to see, because this is the time for belief, conception. And whether you believe in all these things or you think they're airy-fairy, notice this, that the world works in cycles and you are no different. And if this is a cycle of conception, then if we're conceiving, then we're working within that cycle. And as I wrote an article a while ago about belief, if you believe the famous saying, if you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're probably right, is the truest statement you'll ever know. No man ever achieved anything that didn't believe he could do so. So in this conception, this idea where we start to plant the seeds, or think about planting them at least, we need to start thinking of a positive way to bring our ideas forward. To bring the love for our folk to the many. Because I'm a great believer that here at Mimmersbrunner, you will notice that we do not talk down upon our people. No matter their inclination, no matter Their faults and failings, we've all had them. I was certainly not perfect. And like I say, I'm certainly not anywhere that I can judge them. For me, they are my folk and they're lost. And I must bring them back to the folk fold, to show them the beauty of the gods and goddesses and their ancestors, those that struggled before. So that's what I'm going to conceive. And there is boldness in it. Like I say, when I first started Mimmersbrunner, I thought, who am I to talk? Who am I to tell people anything? I felt small. But through my ancestors, I started to feel that it doesn't matter. If everybody laughs at me and mocks me and ridicules me, what does it matter? Nothing ventured, nothing gained, hey? Take the memory of the Kimberley. As long as I'm true to myself, then I'm true to myself. What better way can I live my life? Even if everybody around laughs. There are people, like I say, been doing this for many years. And I did fear that my ideas would be laughed on, joked about, ridiculed. But like I say, I did it anyway. So, and I can't remember if it was at this period that I thought about doing it. I believe it must have been because I started the website in February 2017, I believe. So it must have come out of a slumber where I conceived it and then started bringing it into action, manifesting it. And that's something that, or that you can go back and read the article to get a little bit more detail on some of the things I was talking about, but that's the message that I want to spread at Winter Solstice. Let's start conceiving a brighter future. Not just focus on all the negative, the time for reflection. We're moving into conception. We've reflected on all the bad, all the things that have gone wrong. Now is the time to not carry on moaning about that. Carry on bemoaning our situation. Now is the time to conceive a better future for us and, more importantly, our children. Like I say, I've grown up in a period that has changed drastically. The home I come from, Birmingham, and that area has changed almost unrecognisably from when I was a child. And not for the better. Crime is on the up and all sorts of... And not just with... In every way, our world seems to be getting darker. So maybe we have reached the darkest point, or maybe it's going to get darker, I don't know. But what I do know is that we have a duty to our ancestors and to those to come to try to make the future as bright as we can, to start lighting the fires, to call sooner back, to call the age of light back. We being the fires and the ideas that we have or we conceive at this time. I see a lot of negativity in our movement, a lot of ideas that just make people feel more and more depressed and hopeless. And that's, with the videos especially, that is what Mimmersbrunner tries to counter, whether it be the world that's getting you down or personal circumstances. Both can be, in fact, personal circumstances can be far more direct and harmful to many people. And it's hard to make things meet in this world, to make a living, to do all you've got to do, and to do right by your family and your friends and your folk. It's a hard ask, but our ancestors answered that call every time. So now it's our turn. There is no other way. So yeah, for this season, I want us to start thinking of how we can positively influence our people, how we can positively take ourselves forward. Now, I've rambled a little bit there, so I'm going to go to some questions. Hopefully, Riss and Hal have given me some good ones, or they've been asked some good ones. So if you've got any now, if you'd be so kind to put them in the chat boxes so Halander and Riz can see them, that would be great. We are having a little bit of a problem accessing the chat on Facebook, so I will get that chat up now and see if I can see anything. But I'm just going to go through some questions. I'll try and keep them on topic, but I'll try and answer all of them as best I can. First, we have a question from Germanic Celtic. Did our Germanic and Celtic ancestors live cohesively at one time? Well, I think by the very nature of this time of year, to try and keep it on topic, we have things like Stonehenge. And smaller versions of Stonehenge or similar types of things are all over Britain, especially. When we go back to that time, the Neolithic, when these things were built, there would have been definitely massive cohesion. Same as we move forward in time, we have the great hill forts of the Iron Age in the UK. These massive constructions of earth and stone. I mean, I've been to some. They're absolutely phenomenal in size, some of them. There must have been great cohesion. Just by that very fact alone. The fact that we could build such massive monuments, which actually, in the early Victorian periods, and before then, they didn't even believe our ancestors could build such things, and they put many of these things down, even Stonehenge, down to the Romans, because they believed that their barbarian ancestors were not capable of such feats, given that they had little metalwork and things like that. So, would there be cohesion? Certainly. And we can see this also in the tribes, how they joined together when they needed to. But when they were separate, they were separate. So yeah, I believe that there was massive cohesive nature to how we existed. This is a slightly unpopular opinion, but we were very much collectivists within our tribe. I doubt there would have been Bob, the Iron Age man, owns that patch of land that his house is on. He'd have built a patch of land that was useful to him within the territory of his folk, that was useful to him for what he offered for the society. There was no individuals then, really, especially if we go back to the Iron Age and previously. The world was far too harsh a place to go out on your own. The only people that lived on their own in those days would be exiles and not trusted. So I hope that answers that a little bit. And like I say, I'd like to say before I go into all of these questions, I am not an academic. I am just like everybody in this chat. I am on a personal quest to understand my ancestors as best I can, and sometimes I'm going to get things wrong. Sometimes I'm going to be at a loss to answer a question, and that's just the nature of being a human. I like to keep that attitude, though, and I think it's a positive attitude to keep, one of humbleness to all information, because that's, like I say, how you learn. You only learn when you realise you don't know. When you know it all, there's nothing to learn, right? There's nowhere to grow. And life is about growth. We've got a slightly offbeat question here that was asked earlier. How did you and Riz first connect? Well, Riz sent me an email about an article I'd written, Consequence of Cowardice, as it happens, and offered to put his efforts into making a video for that article. I wrote a couple of small things first to test the water, as Consequence of Cowardice was going to be a big video. And the rest is history. Okay. Okay, we've got a question about live streams now from Tristan Evans. Yeah, we'll certainly be doing these. He's asking about, sorry, I need to tell you the questions. You know what I'm answering. He's asking if he'd like to see more regular streams. And that's definitely something that we plan on doing. We've, like I say at the beginning of the show, we've invested pretty much everything that we have got in. In fact, like I say, a little bit more, because we've actually cut into our initial money that we put in. So we've invested a lot of money in this, as we promised to do with that money. We said at the beginning that we wanted to expand Mimmersbrunner, and that's something that we certainly want to hold ourselves accountable to. We're not just taking donations and spending them on living. In fact, me and Rhys live pretty frugally, given our situations, which I'm not going to go into our personal situations, but I can assure you that we put the money, and it's mostly put here. Well, it's all put here. Like I say, we've actually gone over into what we initially put in to buy the shirts, etc. So we definitely plan on doing more live streams. That's what we've invested in the future of Mimmersbrunner. And I know we've appeared to have slacked a little bit towards the end of the year, but we've gone into our own little slumber. I suppose I can make an excuse given the time of year. But we plan on coming out the stalls next year with a lot more work, both on every front. We even have another channel planned. Hopefully it's going to go into some slightly different aspects that we want to try and separate a little bit from Mimmersbrunner, to keep Mimmersbrunner safe, or as safe as we can make it. So yeah, they will be happening. They'll probably be a little bit slower at first as we just work our way around the technology, and I work around my nerves and maybe plan them a little bit better. Sorry if I've spoken too fastly. I mean, that's not even a word. See, but they will get more professional as we do more. And thanks for everybody joining us tonight. I'd actually like to go, before I go on to the next question, that altogether, I mean, we've probably got about over 200 viewers this evening, which is really great. We were actually expecting about 50 viewers tonight, so it's really positive and great to see. So thank you for everybody coming out and supporting us here. Okay, back to the question. Sorry if I have to look this way for the question. Sorry. How can we wake up our people? Ask Poseidon live. Well, that's a big question, Poseidon. Thanks for giving me a tough one there. Like I say, the object of Mimmersbrunner, or what we're doing, is to try to imbue an identity. Because our identity, in my opinion, as we see with the things like the word Anglo-Saxon being wanting to be banned from academia, we can see that our identity is being stolen. And without an identity, we become lost, and it leads to all sorts of vices. People get into alcoholism, drug use. They start to find pleasure in more instantaneous gratification because they don't see themselves connected to this, as we do here, as this great stream that goes back to the beginning of time and reaches out to as far as we can take it. So our identity is how I think we need to wake people up in a positive way. We show them the beauty of what we are, of what we represent. We don't get tricked into fighting them on their terms. Fighting these people that are trying to steal our identity and remove it from us so we become voidless numbers in a system, an economic system where everything's about money and everything's about personal gain, but something far more connected. And when we show people that, I believe that it's a natural inclination to want to gravitate towards this identity. They've created a hole within our folk, and we need to fill that hole with what should be there. Their sense of purpose, their sense of who they are. So that would be my slightly long answer, but it's a big question, and I'm one man, that's my ideas. I'm sure everybody out there has got their own ideas and got their own ways to do it. And I encourage as many people doing as many things as they can. But I try to encourage people to keep it positive, because that's very important in getting anybody to come over to your side. Noah Sherwood asks, is there an oath we can take for our people? Well, certainly. I would, though, advise here that it's personal, and it's to who you want it to be to who you want it to be to. And you think about it, so it becomes. We can look back at old writings and try to reconstruct things, but we're just as. They were flesh and blood like us. Oaths have importance and meaning when they come from you. So it has to be your oath to your people. Or your god or goddess, whichever you favour. Whichever god or goddess you feel more aligned to. And that's something I'd just like to touch upon a second there. I see some arguments with certain names about who's, masculine, feminine deities, etc., and who's number one, and who's the main deity, and who's second, and who's this. And for me personally, I work on who I feel the most connected to. What deity feel best represents me? Or I'm a representation of them, of who I should be. And then I go about trying to embody that idea and bring forth that deity into this reality. Now, if we all do that, then there's no point squabbling over whose is more important. The reason they're all there is because they're all important. And there is no shame in worshipping one or the other more than another. And I find that so that's something important. So if you make an oath, align yourself with, this would be my personal advice, maybe, so align yourself and make it a personal oath, not something written down by somebody else that represents them. Make it personal to you. Somebody's asking Eternal Respawn is asking if I would ever do a joint stream with Oakwise Reiki on YouTube. Sadly, I've not heard of that person. And that's not because they may not be big or well known or whatever, and I don't want to. It's just I've got children, I homeschool, I run the streams, I try to make money for us to eat. I barely get time to actually watch any streams or read anything anymore. That's one of the things that come in of doing our own things. Is I don't really get a chance. I try to every now and again pop into live streams when I'm working, just have them on in the background. So I try to keep up with certain things, but so I don't know who that person is, but I'll try and check them out. Sorry, I'm just looking at. Okay, so we've got a question from Voivode Vlad Dracula. I pronounced that terribly, sorry. How do we help ourselves? If we work within our cities and towns, we are given a second place status. If we move outside to far outside rules, we are targeted to the point of persecution. Well, how we help ourselves is, again, by being good. I mean, I will do shows on some of these things in the future, but like the power of gratitude. The power of, in your local community, wherever it is, when people do things good, reward them. Tip the barber that took extra care with your hair, or tip the delivery guy that always gets your stuff there delivered and safe. Say a nice word, a nice compliment to those around you. It's a powerful thing to acknowledge somebody's work, acknowledge what they're doing right. And hopefully that will produce more of them. That will help them do more things right, obviously. And also appreciate you. You'll be quite surprised. If you practice gratitude with people around you, you'll be quite surprised how they respond back. It sounds like just something very simple, but I've had many experiences where a simple act of gratitude that they did not expect has then led to a great bond and relationship with that person. And when you get those bonds and relationships, it's much harder for people to just demonize you, call you names, because these people go, that person, you'll be reflecting your true self, your good intentions, the person you want to be. And I think that's important. So that's one way we could help ourselves. We can't run from any situation. And certainly if we take examples from the Kimberley, they certainly didn't run. From Siege919, we've got any chance of a conversation with Tom Roswell. I've spoken to him a few times personally in messages. He's an interesting guy. He's got some interesting ideas. He's got a much bigger audience than me. I don't think... so maybe that's something for him to decide. We're still a very small channel, so getting our work out there, our videos especially, sharing those is really helpful. But yeah, so that's probably something we'll have to look at. Sakis Tolly said, have you read any books by Ron McVan? If so, what do you think? I haven't read full books, but I have. When he had his Facebook page up, he used to do posts of big segments from books, and I read some of those, and some of his articles were very interesting, and I found them they're good perspectives. Like I say, I might not agree 100% with everybody and everything, but I'm not supposed to. I'm a different person. But I think he comes from a good place, and he comes from a genuine place of wanting to understand, and I think that's all we can ever ask from anybody that's presenting any information. If they're coming from a genuine position of wanting to understand the world around them and better it, then I think their work is worthy. Sorry, I'm just going to read. GC just points out again that we can provide optimism as a way forward. Sorry for that. I was trying to make sense of the question. Sorry for that bit of dead air there. This and he says that is the real purpose of the gods, to try and show them. Like, he obviously, GC is more aligned to 4, so he wants to emulate 4 and help them on their way to prosperity, which is a noble endeavor for sure. Okay. I'm getting through the questions. How can we donate? From Rod. Ko-Fi is probably the best. I haven't put descriptions in. I'm a bit unprepared. Sorry about that, but we had I was meant to be doing all that when we was having the echo effect on the stream, and I didn't want it to affect the main stream, so I got a bit tied up with that, so I didn't end up doing any what are they called, descriptions. But what I would like to say, why it's just on why it's on my mind, is that this will not be archived at YouTube or Facebook, sadly. With the censorship, we're worried that the wrong question in the chat, or I say something slightly non-PC, that it will get taken down. So we're going to archive everything at Libri TV. I'm sure Riz and Hallinder can put a link in there. And also, we will then, about a week or two later, put it up on BitChute. Just see what other questions I've got here. Nomadic Heathenism says, how can we make true, proper friends who will have our backs? Many friends who you red pill slowly slacken over the years and get weaker and return to the void. How do we make friends? First, so gratitude, showing your actual love. We have to put our money where our mouth is, or at least our actions where our mouth is. We say that we love our folk, that we want to help them and we want to embrace them. Well, then we must help them and embrace them, not just online, socially saying how much we love them, but in real life. And that's not going to work with everybody. Some people are still going to go their own way, and it's a little bit too much, but the best way we can make friends is is attracting people to us. Don't pander to anybody. Show who you are, and people will, hopefully people will come. But show your love. I mean, that's important. Okay, so can you 1 second of how would the winter solstice work for people in the southern hemisphere, since our seasons are opposite? Obviously, you have the summer solstice right now. Just like Riss, who's over there in the good old down under. So you would be celebrating summer solstice, the rise of the sun. Now, how would our ancestors have seen that? I don't know. As I don't know if they ever encountered that, but yeah. So you would be celebrating summer solstice. Oh, yeah, this. I might have to just read this. It's quite big. Sorry about this. This is a very big question. It's basically, I'm trying to get this reduced down a bit. It's about how I reference Northern Spirit in some of our videos and Spartans sometimes too. Sorry for that. That's right. And obviously that the Spartans were not Northern. Well, obviously, just to explain a little bit there. Firstly, I talk about Northern Spirit because they're my ancestors. They're who I am. I talk about Spartans because they're my wider ancestry. And the Spartans had a very similar way of viewing many things that work for the videos. So I really just put them in. It's not me trying to claim one for the other or the other way round. And when I'm trying to communicate with the sort of Northern is just my Northern folk, I'm a Northern European. It's a way to distinguish myself. There can be a tendency, especially with America, the idea that Europe's just Europe, but in America we're very different. I mean, in Europe we're very different, and we've got a very long history. We differentiate ourselves in many different ways. So it's just a distinguishation between me being a Northern European. Would we ever consider doing a video on the Visigoths and the warriors of Spain? Possibly. We've got a hell of a lot of ideas. In fact, more ideas than we've got time to do half the time. But we're definitely open to new ideas, and people can always mail with an idea, especially if they've got some kind of outline or something they want to talk about. Like I say, we can definitely take these things on board, because if we think it could make a good video or we could get a good point across because of it, we would certainly be up for making the video for sure. But okay, that seems to be all the questions I'm thinking. I just check with the. All right. Well, I think that's going to conclude this stream. I don't want it to be too long. I find sometimes they can be quite cumbersome. And I want it to be rewatchable. But we're certainly going to do more live streams in the future. We're going to be making more videos and getting more articles out and really trying to up our game to the potential we want, to put our effort where our mouth is. Like I say, we've talked about conception now and how we want to bring forward our ideas, and we're trying to live up to that. And we hope all of you, in your own ways, do the same. Start to create, not be living under the creations of others, but start to create in your own way. in your own worlds what needs to be done. And it doesn't matter how small it is. Even in your small circles, your family, your garden, start to create. We are, in fact, the Europeans who created most of the world. Most of the inventions, most of the ideas, they came from here. Let's live in the spirit of them and be creators ourselves. And a happy Yule to everybody, by the way. I can see people saying it in the chat. I've got the chat up, sorry. But I'm going to end this stream with a video that's done quite well. It's got 10,000 views now on YouTube. Your time is now, because I think it kind of fits the mood of the end of this stream, or what I wanted to present at least, if I did my job. So I'm going to finish up with that and bid you all a good night and a good night solstice. I mean, I don't know if anybody's seeing the sun come up this morning as it begins to rise. I might stay up as it's already getting pretty late. Just a little message to the Patreons. I will jump over in Patreon where I will go on voice with you guys for a little bit after the stream's up. But to everybody else, good night, and really, thanks for joining us here on our first Mimmersbrunner Live. Okay, be well and speak soon. I said that meaning to just be able to press this button, but it didn't quite work. Okay, be well and speak soon. Thanks for joining us.
You are no random event, no accident of nature. It is not by some curse you stand there. There is no one to blame. You are exactly where you are meant to be. Against almost impossible odds, you came into being. By ancient ancestral effort, your heart beats. Long before you were a twinkle in your father's eye, your forebears endured all hardships. They stared down the impossible, and by their audacity made it flinch. When all hope was lost, they held on, because they had a dream, and that dream was you. Every lovingly sung lullaby by adoring mother was sung in your honor. Every tightly held hand was yours. You are the consequence of every sacrifice by caring mother, the last concern of every dying father. From one to another, from birth to birth, you are the personification of all their love and endurance. You are the point of everything. They are the glorious pillar on which you stand, with their memory in your heart and their blood in your veins. Tell me, what could overcome you? What odds could defeat you? What measure of despair has your blood not already defeated 1,000 times? Now it is your time to unflinchingly hold that stare. Your turn to endure beyond all hope, as the only thing that is ever truly yours is your time, and your time is now. This is your moment in an unbroken drama of life that started at the dawn of man. It is your turn to dance on the edge of the great nothing and show the world who you are made of. For one day, this time will fade into the ancient memory of another. Your actions here will echo through time. In 100 years from now, maybe it will be your memory that reaches through the darkness to say, hold on.